Hey there, Internet! It's me, James Ferguson, coming at you with episode number 94 of Funny Book Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorDNA.com. This week's guest is Rich Douek, the writer of Road of Bones, coming in May from IDW Publishing. It's a pretty creepy comic, set in 1953 in Siberia, where a terrifying monster lurks in the darkness. I got a look at the first issue, and it's pretty solid stuff. Plus, it's illustrated by Alex Cormack, who you might know from Sync, so that is always a good thing in my book. Rich can be found online on Twitter and Instagram as rdouek, that's D-O-U-E-K, and at facebook.com/guttermagic. Alright, short intro this time around, so let's get right into it with episode number 94 of Funny Book Splatter with my guest, Rich Douek. So, to start us off, how would you describe Road of Bones? If you had to pitch it to someone on the convention floor or, run it into someone on the street, how would you explain the book to them?
Okay, well, Road of Bones is basically a survival horror story. It's about a guy who is imprisoned in the Soviet Gulag for like 20 years and gets a chance to escape, but then finds out that out on the tundra is probably even deadlier than the camp he was imprisoned in. So he's got to deal with his fellow escapees and the environment, and also this supernatural creature called a Domovic that may be helping him, maybe not. But basically, yeah, it's a prison escape story that gets pretty brutal as they get further and further into this like frozen wilderness.
And I think that's saying something, because I mean, in the first issue alone, I mean, just the prison alone looks pretty brutal to start with, and then it gets worse.
Yeah, I mean, like in doing like research, like I was reading a lot about like the conditions in like in the Gulag, and they really were like hellish. Like even the title Road of Bones is it's basically there's a real highway in Siberia called the Kolyma Highway that is called the Road of Bones, and the reason it's called that is because there's somewhere between 20 and 30,000 people buried in there.
Wow.
in the foundations, because what would happen is it's like they're digging through the tundra and the ground is frozen, right? Mm-hmm. And these poor people are like starving, overworked, prison violence, like all this stuff. So someone would die. Rather than dig like a new hole in the frozen ground, it's like they just, threw them in the ditch for the road and paved right over them, which is like, like you want to talk horror like that, that's like horrible, that's like real life horror. So, just kind of like, like the camps were like, insanely brutal, but that's also kind of like doing like research into that, and what people would do like in order to get away from that is kind of what inspired me to write the story in the first place. So
yeah, it's a very interesting setting. Like it's not something that I think at least stood out for me of like a layman of this. It's I think what is it, like the 50s it takes place. Yeah. So it's not like during World War II. It's not like during anything else. Like I feel like I the first time I read through it, I glossed over the date, and then when I went back and checked it, I was like, oh, like this isn't like I just assumed it was like a World War II thing, but
right. Yeah. No, it's an interesting time in history, because it's like World War II is over, but Joseph Stalin is still in power in in Russia, and in the camps themselves, like what happened like during the war. They offered a lot of these prisoners to, say, hey, come, if you join the army and you survive the war, we'll give you a reduced sentence, maybe not freedom, but, maybe 10 years instead of 20 years or privileges or things like that. So when the war was over, a lot of these guys that took the deal were like coming back into the system and kind of clashing with, the people who held out and wouldn't take the deal. So it's like, you sort of had these two factions among like the prison gangs, which were, like one were the guys that, absolutely refused to work with the government in any capacity. And then the other ones were like the ones that did. And that's kind of like what sets the stage for a lot of the chaos that's going on, like in the camp. when Roman decides to escape.
And so
Yeah.
how did you find something like this? You know, you mentioned doing a lot of research into this and this time period, the setting and whatnot. Like, how did something like this come up? Because, like I said, I feel like I could just be totally like, you know, dumb about this as a layman, but like I'm like I don't feel like that's like a huge public knowledge kind of event.
Yeah, no, I don't think it is. I mean, there have been like books written about the subject, like fiction and nonfiction, but I don't think it's like super well explored. Like there hasn't been a big like you know, movie or some kind of like pop culture kind of thing set like in that area. Like for me, I was just kind of like I was researching prison breaks kind of like in general for another story I was working on, and just kind of like the more I read, the more I was like, wow, this is an extreme situation. This is like kind of like fertile ground to like tell like a really good story about like, you know, survival and hopelessness, because it's like, you know, it is like, you know, you kind of think of like a prison camp as like a brutal situation, and like, but when you think of like just like living in a place like Siberia is hard enough without like being a prisoner, or you know what I mean? So it's like it just seemed to me like a really great opportunity. Like you know, there's like a lot of stuff there to explore. So yeah, it like in a weird way, I kind of like, I guess, stumbled upon like the time period and the setting like almost accidentally, but you know, I found a lot there that like to just like build this story out of.
Now, is that the same case with this supernatural creature that's involved with the book as well?
Well, that actually comes from you know, established like Russian folklore. Like I part of my family is Russian, so you know, it's sort of like these like words you kind of hear your grandmother say every now and then that their grandmother said to them, you know, and you know, doing a little research, like the concept of the creature, it's called a domovic, and it's kind of like a house spirit. So it's like, there's like similar creatures in, you know, Scottish folklore or Slavic folklore, but basically it's like, it's almost like, you know, like the fairy tale of like the shoemaker elves. So it's like, you know, it's like the spirit that watches over your house. You might leave out some food for it, and maybe it'll help you with your household chores and like protect you, you know, protect your house and things like that. So in the story, it's like, Roman, the main character, is in this hopeless place, this, you know, camp, and like just sort of like what he latches onto is this like piece of folklore from his childhood that his grandmother told him that, you know, if you leave out food for the domovic, that, you know, the place that you live in, he'll protect you. So he's just basically kind of like doing that because he works in the kitchen and he can like steal a little food. And so it's like sort of like, you know, at the beginning of the story, it's like he probably doesn't even know like how much he actually believes this is like a real thing, or whether this is just something that, you know, he's kind of making up in his mind just to be able to cope with like the brutal circumstances he's in. But as the story goes on, it sort of just starts becoming more and more real.
Yeah, it's funny how it like the pace and the kind of build up to it is pretty solid, because like at times you like I like that you pointed that out. Like, yeah, he might not know if it's real or not. Like that idea of like, yeah, he could just be crazy, but it's one of those things like better safe than sorry, I guess, of like, well, yeah, I guess, you know, it could be not, but what's the worst going to happen? But the worst that could happen is that like you starve to death. There's already not a lot of food going around, and now it's like, yeah, there's even less because you're giving some to a potentially imaginary creature out there.
Yeah, right. Or like, you know, yeah, it's like how far is like you gonna push it, you know? Like, it's almost like I feel like in a way, like the way a lot of people may like treat like a horoscope or like a fortune cookie or something. It's like, you know, it's like, oh, I don't really know if it's real, but you know, it's like if my horoscope says I'm gonna have a good day, you know, maybe I'm gonna have a good day. You know what I mean? But yeah, like there is that kind of like aspect to it where it's like he is kind of like playing a dangerous game, and and he does get in trouble for it, you know.
And in the build up, like a lot of it is kind of shown in shadow, you know. So it's like you have this kind of feeling like did I see something there? Is there something there? And so like you're questioning it too as you go through the book, and like I'll be conscious of spoilers and whatnot, but like you know, we're talking about it. There is something in there, but it's just the way that it's shown leaves a lot to the imagination as to what it could be at first. So it's a great setup.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's something that like you know, Alex Cormack, the artist, I think that's something that he executed like really, really well. One of the things that like, you know, we're kind of like talking about with like horror and in a comic book, it's like, you know, you can't kind of really do like a jump scare, you know what I mean? Like there's no way I can make like a big sound or like have something jump out where you're going to be like, oh, you know what I mean? So you kind of have to go for this like atmospheric kind of like creeping sense of like dread, and like, you know, gore plays a part in it too, but it's just sort of like, you just kind of want to engage people's imaginations and let them kind of like, let their imaginations go a little bit. And I think that's one thing that, you know, he did like an amazing job with, was just sort of like that, keeping you on that edge of like, you know, is this real? Is this not real? Like, you know, what's going on here?
I mean, his work is nothing short of incredible. So like in seeing the thing, like first of all, he seems incredibly fast from what, with the amount of comics that he has come out all the time. But he does tell a pretty mean story in terms of setup and just pacing and tension and stuff like that. So it's a pretty cool setup. And is he coloring the book too?
Yeah, he's doing the colors and the line art, and Justin Birch is doing the lettering. And I think Justin's also doing a really good job of like kind of, you know, leading everybody through the story, you know, like rendering the sound effects well and stuff.
It comes together really well.
Yeah.
Like I was happy to see Alex on a book. I mean, like, look, I'm happy to see his artwork anywhere. So to see that coming up, I'm like, this is great. It's pretty cool stuff there. So I guess, well, you have some experience with IDW and with Gutter Magic way back when. Well, not even way back when, like not that long ago in the scheme of things.
Yeah, it was like 2016.
So
2 years ago.
Was this just something else that, like, you know, you kind of continue to pitch out books like this and kind of brought it up to them, and or you, I guess, friendly with editors, and how do you kind of be able to put that in there?
Yeah, well, you know, Bobby Curnow, who is the editor on Gutter Magic, is, you know, the guy that I pitched it to at IDW, and he liked it. But of course, you know, it's not like 100% up to him. Like, he had to kind of take it to his boss and like all the way up to the publisher. But yeah, you know, I mean, IDW wasn't the only place I pitched it to. I pitched it around to, you know, several different companies, and, you know, a lot of them liked it, but maybe thought it wasn't right for them, or, you know, a couple didn't get back to me. A couple got back to me after I'd already signed the paperwork with IDW. So, you know, it's, I mean, it's all like, you know, being like an independent comic creator, it's always like hustle, you know, like I'm always like, right, you know, it's like I get the books that I'm doing, like they're on my plate, and you know, I'm working on them, but I'm also working on like, well, what's the next thing? And then what's the thing after that? You know, I'm like trying to hustle to like find artists that I want to work with, that want to work with me, getting pitch packages together, getting that out to like publishers. And, you know, that's just like, that's the game. That's what you gotta do.
How many projects do you think you have in the works right now?
Right now, I have Wailing Blade with Comics Tribe. I have Rotobones with IDW. Actually have more Gutter Magic that's going to be coming out like towards the end of next year and into next year. Working with a new company. Well, they're not new, but new for Gutter Magic. They're called Source Point Press. They're another small publisher, but they're making like really big strides. So they really love Gutter Magic. So they want to do some more. So what we're going to be doing is probably reissuing the original series, and then just like, you know, the original series ended with an issue 4, so I think we're going to be rolling right into like an issue 5 and go from there. Then I have maybe like 2-3 other projects that I'm definitely doing, but you can't really talk about right now. And and then I have like maybe, I don't know, I'd say somewhere between 4 or 5 other things that I'm like, or in various stages of development that I'm getting ready to pitch around.
That's great. Yeah, man, that's a hustle.
It's a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff, and I have like, day job on top of that, and kids and all that. So,
just a little bit.
I stay busy.
So, how do you budget time for that? Is that something like, you're up early or you're up late or something to kind of squeeze in time?
Yeah, sometimes, like I tend to, I try doing the thing where like, you get up at like 5 a.m. and right before everybody's up, but I'm just like kind of, my brain's like pretty useless until, 9 or 10. So, that didn't really work for me. So I tend to be like, more like I'll stay up late and like lose the sleep on that end. So I do that. And then I also like, just whenever I can, like during the day, like I have like about an hour or so on the train each way of like a commute. So I'm usually have my laptop out there and get done when I can. If I have like a lunch hour, like, or like a leisurely day, sometimes I'll just like go to like a coffee shop and then just like on the weekends also I fill in a lot. But like for me, it's like, I think like what helps me a lot is just sort of like, sort of like organizing like my process, like, when it like, I don't do like a ton of outlining, but I do enough that like, so when I like sit down to script, like I kind of know what I need to do. And there's not a lot of like, staring at the, screen being like, okay, well, what happens next? You know what I mean? Like I kind of have like at least like a little bit of a roadmap that I could follow. And that just kind of helps me stay focused.
So is that kind of, I guess something that's always in the back of your mind thinking, so that way when you do get that time to write, you're able to just kind of knock something out real quick?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like, like just sort of like being ready to go, like when I have the time to devote to it. And it's not like I don't deal with like writer's block. Like I'm sure I get it like just as much as everybody else, but it's like, I think like kind of like one of the things it's like the more you do it, the like it's never easy, but like the easier it is to just sort of like power through those like times where like maybe you're not totally feeling it, but you still know it has to get done. So it's like, you just sort of like force yourself in, to like do it. Like I think like another like good thing is like my day job, I'm like a copywriter at an advertising agency. So it's like that involves a lot of writing and a lot of like, writing against deadlines and things like that. So it's like, day to day, I'm writing, even if it's not stuff that like, like I'm not like writing, I'm writing about like dog food or air fresheners or whatever the client is. So it's like, right. It's not like I'm like creatively writing in the sense of like something that's going to be a comic, but it's like I'm like, doing the physical action of like, and like the mental action of like engaging my brain to like, get the fingers moving and typing on the keyboard. And then just sort of like that just helps me a lot, like being able to like jump out and jump in like as needed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's like sense. Copywriting is still a form of writing. So like, I guess it's a matter of kind of like you're always honing your craft in that way. So like almost like sharpening the blade where it's like, all right, when I need it, I'm ready. And so that way, like, I have a hard time sometimes where it's like, all right, I got to sit down and write something, but I don't know, I got to get like that mindset or something like that. And it's like, it's almost like having to like start from, I got to run fast. I got to get up to that full speed. Whereas like, if you're ready to go, you're off to the races right off the bat.
And it's so hard having to use the same machine that is like your writing thing is also like the computer. Like that's what I write on, but it's also the source of like 90% of the things that are going to distract me. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like I'll be like typing, it's like, oh, let's see what's going on Twitter, what's going on Facebook, and it's just like,
spend some time on YouTube, go around. Yeah, it can go on and on like that. It can be kind of tough.
Write a little, watch a video, so it's tough, but I think it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you just kind of like, the more you do it, the more you like sort of learn how to work around that.
You've kind of been in some other genres, I guess, more of fantasy with stuff like Wailing Blade and Gutter Magic. So, what kind of pulled you into horror for Road of Bones? Was it all finding these kind of things in the research angle?
Yeah, I was kind of finding stuff in the research and just really thinking like I never really thought of myself as like a horror writer, but like, I was just like, I feel like I can really do this, and I feel like I've got like a good story here. And I started talking to like, you're familiar with comic shops, John Lees.
He was like one of the first people I reached out to when I started the show, because I'm like, I gotta talk to him about it. And he's great. Like he knows like seemingly everything about this genre, so it's kind of crazy like to have a conversation with him, because he'll just like go on and on about it in the most loving way possible.
Yeah, I mean, and I've read scripts from John, like of stuff he has in development, and it's just like, John, you're really sick fuck, man. It's like, like, are you okay?
Yeah,
like we've shared like a hotel room at like conventions and stuff, and I'm like, do I have to sleep with one eye open? It's like, but yeah, I mean, I feel like like this story, like there are a few different ways to approach it. Like I could have just sort of approached it as like, a straight up adventure story, like, or like survival story, kind of like that movie The Gray with like Liam Neeson or something, But I don't know, like I always like to kind of have like a little something like kind of off or weird or like supernatural in there. And, the more I was just kind of like looking into like how John tells his stuff and like how other writers approach like comic book horror and suspense and stuff, it just seemed like a right fit. And I was just, once I started doing it, I really enjoy it too. It's like there's just something great about exploring those darker places.
It's addictive. It's a fun genre. I found like, I think the way that you described the book earlier is a great way to look at horror comics, in my opinion, because it's more of like the feeling you get when you read the book, less about, because you can't do jump scares or have a great, soundtrack or something like that. You have to establish this like, almost like unsettling, get under your skin kind of feeling to it that like can stick with you. So like that can be more powerful sometimes, where like you want that person to be dreading turning the page, but they have to turn the page to see what happens next. Yeah, that's an awesome. It's like a weird feeling. It's like almost tough to describe at times, but like when you can get it, it's like, this is amazing. It fires on all cylinders, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like you really kind of like feel your like adrenaline pumping, like in a way. It's like I love that it just sort of like when I read a horror comic, it's like engaging me. It's almost like my imagination is kind of like filling in the blanks. You know what I mean? And, it's a great feeling to be able to like kind of like do that for other people. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, and is this planned as is it a 4 or 5 issue miniseries?
It's 4 issues. I think we kind of like bounce back between 4 and 5, but it's like, just like as I'm writing it, like I just found I think like, I just didn't really want to like let up the pace, like, not to like give away too much spoilers, but it's like, sort of like things devolve like out on the tundra. And then once they start, I was just like, nah, it's just kind of like breakneck speed.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like a horror book, so it's not like it's like, and then they found I found all these rainbows, and it was just sunshine and ice cream, everything was great. They just had to get out of that prison. I mean, there's a lot of blood in this first issue. That's before they even leave the prison. So it's
that's I kind of joke around with Bobby, the editor, because like I have to write like the blurbs about it that are going to go in like previews or like things like that, and I joke about it. I was like, and I'm like, number 1's the feel good issue. It's like, because like it goes to some pretty dark places that I hope are like exciting and maybe a little unexpected, or maybe they're expected. I don't know, but we'll see. But I'm having a great time writing it.
Well, I think between this and Sync, I can't imagine like how Alex colors Like he must have just like an abundance of red available. Like I hope he colors digitally because it's just like there's so much on these pages that I can't. It's just like just wearing out those red pens and everything with the amount on here.
Red and black and yeah, it's just like but Sync was the book that kind of convinced me that Alex was like, you know, probably the best guy I think like for this series. Like I love that book and just the way that he, you know, like just like his storytelling and like the way he handles everything. I was like, you know, I kind of pulled him aside at a con and I was like, listen, I got an idea for a book. I think, you know, you'd be amazing for this. And like we talked about it. He loved the idea. And he, you know, we were just talking about it the other day. He's having a great time on it. Like weirdly enough, like he'd always wanted to like, do something set in like snowy mountains and stuff. So this was like perfect for him. And yeah.
So then how is the collaboration process there? Cause so it sounds like he's really interested in this. Do you write like a full script out or you, do you kind of go back and forth a little bit?
No, I write full scripts. You know, we'll talk about we'll talk about like design things and like in the kind of like the layout stages, like, you know, where he might want to like add something or take something away, or like how, like when we're like, talking about the covers, like we'll talk about like what's going on in the issue. Usually like what happens is like, I'll send him the script and give him a chance to read it. And then like, we'll talk about like, you know, kind of like what's going on, where things are going in the next issue, stuff like that. Just so we kind of like both get on the same page about like where things are going. But yeah, you know, it's like, it's collaborative, you know, like I'm always like excited to like hear Alex's input, like, and like stuff that like he thinks is cool or that like, you know, if, cause it's like the way I always look at it is it's like, you know, if you want to think of it as like, you know, say like making a book is like going on a hike in the wilderness, right? So it's like, I'm making the script, so I'm making the map, right? But like, he's the one that's like out there on the hike. So it's like, he's got this map and maybe, I don't know, maybe there was an earthquake and like, you know, the terrain's a little different from the map. So he's the one that's got to like kind of figure out how to navigate the terrain. Like, you know, like I help as much as I can with the script, but it's like, you know, he's the one that's kind of going to have to make those decisions of like, you know, what angles he's going to draw things at, or like, you know, like how big the panels are in relation to each other on the page. And it's like, you know, like it's like a process, like, you know, like he shows me each page, like as it gets done, like anything you want to change, like, you know, it's very rare because like I said, he's really, really talented. So it's like 9 times out of 10, I'm like, nope, that's better than I even imagined in my head. But, you know, like every now and then, you know, like there's something where I'll just be like, oh no, like I was kind of thinking maybe we could show this, or, you know, like, or like if we just kind of show it from a different angle, or like, you know, I'm having trouble understanding what's going on here, you know, and it's just like, that's like the process. There's like a lot of back and forth, but, you know, one of the great things about working with like someone as talented as Alex is that it's like, I just kind of like, know that like it's going to be 90% there, you know, when I give it to him.
Yeah, I really like your I guess metaphor for comic book creating. That's an interesting one. You make the map, you're not the one actually going on the journey, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's similar. Like I guess I feel like you're shooting a movie. You know, it's like you got the script, but it's like, you know, well, like if the script says, you know, it's supposed to be raining and you're shooting on location and it's like a sunny day, it's like the director's gotta have to figure something out. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, that's kind of like, I found it's like a pretty good approach because it's like, you know, it's not like writing like a novel or something where it's like, it's just me and like I'm the only creator. It's like, it's a team effort. So like, I like involving like the whole team as much as I can.
That's great, man. So it looks like the first issue's due out May 22nd. So
May 22nd.
Available for pre-order.
And then, yep, it's available for pre-order. I can.
Yeah, I have the code. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So
the code? Okay, cool.
MAR190729. But we'll link it all in the show notes as well.
Yep.
And yeah,
Nice.
you were kind enough to share the first issue with me, and it's some pretty great stuff. Like, I like I said, the way the tension's built up, the subtle hints at the monster or creature that we got available in this, and the glimpse we get of it, I think, is what really stands out at me, because I'm like, if you're not convinced by that page, like, there's like it's like that there's nothing better than like a solid cliffhanger, and like this book has it in such like a perfect way. You're like, damn, I need more of this like right now. Like so it's a great way to
awesome.
to wrap up that first issue. So definitely looking forward to the rest of that series and where it goes. And and like we said before, Alex Cormack on art, you can't really go wrong with something like that.
No, you really can't.
So otherwise, the book will be out May 22nd. Best places to find you online, where would that be?
You can find me on Twitter at @rdouek. Same thing on Instagram. And on Facebook, I usually direct people to go to facebook.com/guttermagic. That's like, because I started it when I started Gutter Magic, but I really just talk about all of my stuff on there. So
perfect.
But yeah, Twitter is where I'm like most active. Trying to get better at Instagram, but as a writer,
you only have so much to say. Like, hey, you want to see a screenshot of some words? Like...
Yeah, exactly. So just at @rdouek, RDOUEK, and if love to hear from my fans or potential fans. Cool. So yeah, just jump on and jump in.
All right, so then that'll wrap it up. Again, all that stuff will be linked in the show notes as well. But that'll wrap it up then for this episode of Funny Book Splatter. I've been James Ferguson with my guest Rich Douek. You've been listening to Funny Book Splatter, a horror comics podcast brought to you by HorrorDNA.com. We have been bringing you the best in horror since 2002. If you like the show, please help me out by leaving a positive review on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe to the show via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. I am always looking for new guests, so if you have a horror comic, I want to hear from you. I don't care if you're a seasoned pro or a first-timer. You can find me on Twitter as @JamesFerguson or via email at james@horrordna.com. In addition to comics, we cover movies, TV shows, books, and video games. We've got news, reviews, guest features, interviews, unboxing videos, and so much more. Check us out at HorrorDNA.com and @HorrorDNA on Twitter.